Hello there. We get advice all the time, don't we? From friends, from family, from books. But have you ever stopped to wonder why the exact same piece of advice can totally change one person's life, but just bounce right off someone else? Well, today, we're going to dig into some warm, heartfelt wisdom that offers an answer. It uses a really simple but powerful metaphor that might just change the way you see your own potential. Let's get into it.
So just try this idea on for a second. What if every opportunity, every bit of advice, every new idea that comes your way, what if it's like a seed, a tiny thing, just full of potential? But here's the kicker. Whether that seed actually grows has very little to do with the seed itself. It has everything to do with the ground it lands on. And in this metaphor, you are the ground. You're the soil.
You know, this idea is actually ancient. It's rooted in a story often called the parable of the sower. But the funny thing is, the story isn't really about the person sowing the seeds, or even about the seeds themselves. The whole point, the part that has all the meaning, is about the different kinds of soil the seeds happen to fall on. So the parable describes 4 conditions. First, you've got the hard path, where a seed can't even break the surface. That's kind of like a cynical or closed-off mindset. Then there's the rocky ground. It looks okay on top, but the roots can't go deep, so the idea just withers away at the first sign of trouble. Next is the thorny soil, where a good idea starts to sprout, but it gets choked out by all the distractions and anxieties of the world. And finally, you have the good soil, receptive, deep, and clear, and it allows that seed of opportunity to really, truly flourish. This quote here, it puts a really nice modern spin on it. The music, that's the opportunity, the wisdom, it's the same for absolutely everyone who walks by. But it's our internal state, our soil, that determines if we even hear it in the first place. And here is the most important part. We are not stuck with the soil we have. We actually have the power to cultivate. So, okay, if we're the soil, the first step is to understand what kind of soil we are. You know, a good gardener doesn't try to grow blueberries in the desert, right? They learn their environment and they plant what's going to thrive there. And it's the same for us. We can achieve some pretty incredible things when we stop fighting our own nature and start playing to our strength.
Let's take a classic example here, the salesperson. We usually picture this smooth-talking, high-energy extrovert, the life of the party. But what if your personal soil is more introverted, quiet, thoughtful, maybe a bit more observant? Does that mean you can't succeed? Oh, not at all. In fact, that might just be your greatest advantage.
And this is where their strength really lies. Instead of dominating the conversation, introverts often excel at nurturing it. They prepare like crazy. They listen, and I mean really listen, to hear what a customer actually needs. Their whole focus is on cultivating a relationship, on building genuine trust that's going to last. See, they aren't trying to be an extrovert. They're leaning into what makes their soil so fertile for growth.
So, knowing your soil, that's step 1. The next step is actually working the land, tending the garden, because the very act of putting in the effort, of getting your hands dirty and participating in your own growth, that changes how you value the outcome. Psychologists actually have a name for this. They call it the IKEA effect. It's the reason that wobbly bookshelf you spent an entire Saturday building feels more valuable to you than some perfect one you just bought pre-assembled. Your labor, your effort, your sweat, it all gets baked right into the final product, and it makes you love it more. And get this, the research on this is fascinating. In some studies, people who build their own little origami things or assembled their own IKEA boxes valued their amateur creations almost as much as items made by experts. They saw their imperfect work through the lens of their own effort. We are literally wired to love the things we labor for. So the next time you're putting off a project, just remember that the simple act of starting, of putting in that work, will literally make you value and love the outcome more. But here's a little word of caution from Papa. That pride, it's a double-edged sword. It feels great, but it can make us totally blind to our own flaws. The real key to growth isn't just about working hard. It's about having the humility to step back, look at our wobbly bookshelf, and say, okay, how can I build the next one even better? All right, so we've prepared our soil, we've tended our garden. Now it's time to enjoy the harvest. And the wisdom here is that the most beautiful parts of the harvest, the real rewards, they're often not the giant prize-winning pumpkins. They're the small, everyday blooms. I want you to just let this quote sink in for a second. It's such a simple idea, but it's so profound. We spend so much of our lives striving for these big, monumental achievements, and we often just fly right past the beautiful, quiet moments that truly make up a life well lived. And what are these big things in disguise? Well, it's that quiet moment in a chair with a good book. It's a shared laugh with a friend that makes your stomach hurt. It's just watching the sun go down. They don't cost a lot of money or require some major life change. They just require our attention. The point isn't to stop dreaming big, but to savor the journey, to notice the wildflowers growing right there beside you. That's where so much of life's happiness is just waiting. Now, no talk about gardening would be complete without talking about weeds, right? Sometimes, even when we have the absolute best intentions, we can end up cultivating things that have disastrous unintended consequences. And this usually happens when we try to force a solution without really understanding the entire ecosystem we're working in. Let's look at a huge historical example, Prohibition in the United States. The goal was noble. It was a weed planted with the best intentions. It was ratified in 1919, and it was supposed to solve major problems in society by banning alcohol. But by 1933, the whole experiment was repealed. So, what happened? Well, the contrast between the goal and the reality is just staggering. Instead of reducing crime, Prohibition fueled the explosive growth of organized crime. Instead of making society stronger, it created this widespread disrespect for the law as millions of normal citizens broke it. It was a powerful, powerful lesson that good intentions just aren't enough. You have to understand the soil you're planting in.
And that brings us right back to you and the garden of your life. It's yours to tend. It's up to you to understand your own unique soil, to value the effort of your work, to savor all the small joys, and to be wise about the weeds. Opportunities, like seeds on the wind, they are everywhere. The only real question is, when they land with you, what kind of ground will they find?